Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for July 12th, 2017. I'm Peter Soretta. In today's show, in the water cooler, we'll be talking about Tour de Pharmacy and annual passes at Universal Studios Hollywood. In the news, we'll be talking about Wonder Woman 2, where it might be set, when it might be set, and who might be in it. Jon Favreau's Lion King remake cast John Oliver in the perfect role. Disney's live-action Aladdin movie is struggling to find its lead actor, and the star of the movie It has been cast in Hulu's Stephen King Multiverse series Castle Rock. Who will he play? In the mailbag, we'll try to attempt to answer the age-old question, what is your favorite movie sequel that is better than the original? And in the spoiler room, Ben Pearson will be joining us to talk about the War of the Planet of the Apes sequel and what it could be about. All that and more. Right here, right now, we have Bradford Oman, who you know as Ethan Anderton on slashfilm.com, to talk us through the news. Brad, how are you doing?
Great, I'm here. Let's do it.
What have you been watching lately, Brad?
So this past weekend, not only did Popstar Never Stopping premiere on HBO, but it came along with sort of a Lonely Island double feature because Andy Samberg worked with Jake Szymanski, who's a director who has did Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates. He's done stuff on Funny or Die, and they created this faux HBO sports documentary, a mockumentary about this little known time during the Tour de France in the 80s when a bunch of cyclists were busted for doping, leaving only 5 cyclists to compete that year. And so it features an insane cavalcade of stars in it as talking heads and as cyclists. Andy Samberg's in it, obviously, but there's John Cena, Dolph Lundgren, Jeff Goldblum, Freddie Highmore, J.J. Abrams. It's insane. Like the roster on this mockumentary is unbelievable, and it's hilarious. And it's only 45 minutes, so it's a documentary short essentially, and it's so funny. So if you have HBO, go out of your way and watch it. It's available right now.
The director of that has been tapped recently for an HBO comedy called Eggplant Emoji, which I know nothing about.
I imagine, since the eggplant emoji is meant to represent penises, I imagine it has something to do with sex.
Okay, what have I been up to recently, Brad? I've been visiting Universal Studios Hollywood. I've lived in Southern California for, I think, like 7 years now, but I have never had an annual pass to Universal Studios Hollywood. I've always had an annual pass to Disneyland, which is an hour drive, and Universal is, just over the hill. So why get an annual pass to the thing that's closer to me? I don't know. Maybe it's because there's less rides. I don't know. But every year I've gone to Halloween Horror Nights there, and I feel like I've gotten my fix there. But recently I've gotten a Costco membership. They sell the gold annual pass that's normally $300 for $200. So that gets me 340 days a year. So why not? So the last 2 weeks I've spent, I've gone there twice now. It's fun. And I feel like you definitely feel like there's a lot less to do there than Disneyland. Have you ever been to Universal Hollywood?
Yeah, I went several times when I lived out in California for a bit in 2009.
Yeah, they've definitely added a few things since you have been there. Obviously, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. They just recently bought DreamWorks Animation, so they've been building this DreamWorks theater attraction, which will house a 4D experience of some of their popular franchises. And right now, there's like these photos with like the characters from Madagascar, Shrek, Trolls, Kung Fu Panda, How to Train Your Dragon. Sadly, the How to Train Your Dragon Toothless is just a statue, not like a character in a suit, which is kind of disappointing because Universal did such a great job with the Transformers characters. Anyways, I'm talking about theme parks way too long and way too much. This is just to tell you what I've been up to lately. And being on a diet and going to Universal Studios sucks. Just as much as it sucks going to Disneyland, but there's turkey legs everywhere, and
oh my god, turkey legs are like the best theme park food ever.
Yes, I can eat that on my keto diet, and like also in Wizarding World of Harry Potter, they have a chicken dinner, which is a good option. Anyways, let's move on into the news. First up, Wonder Woman 2 may be set in the 1980s and bring back Chris Pine. Our own Hoai-Tran Bui wrote an article about this on slashfilm.com. The news originated on Screen Rant, was seemingly confirmed by The Wrap, and that is that Wonder Woman 2 might be set in the 1980s, which is the most unsuspected era for that sequel. I mean, I assumed that it was going to be like World War II.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely surprising, especially because, there's already been comparisons between Wonder Woman and Captain America, the First Avenger. And since Winter Soldier does have a bit of a Cold War narrative, part in there, even though it's not set during the Cold War, it feels like it's still echoing, the same narrative timeline or structure, I guess you could say. So I'm not sure if they should do something that makes it stand out a little bit more, or if it will stand out more on its own. But it's definitely surprising that they're jumping that far ahead into that time period.
The most interesting part of the report, however, is the confirmation that Chris Pine will return in Wonder Woman 2. And Chris Pine played Steve Trevor, Diana's love interest in the first film, and that was set during World War I. I mean, I think we have to talk a little spoilers to have a conversation about this. So please skip ahead a minute or so if you haven't seen Wonder Woman. But at the end of Wonder Woman, that character seemingly dies in an airplane.
Yeah, I mean, he basically meets roughly a similar fate that actually Steve Rogers does in Captain America: The First Avenger, because he sacrifices himself to fly a plane out of there so that it doesn't blow up and kill a bunch more people. And I mean, it would be...
It is weird. They didn't show him actually dying. Like, they showed it from afar, the plane blowing up. So They could come up with a reason. It is a comic book movie. I went up to Jeff Johns after I saw the movie, and I asked him about that, and he was like, nope, he's dead. So
well, and here's the thing, too, is like, I feel like you can't bring Steve Trevor back because it kind of underscores that emotional moment that Diana has at the end of the movie. I feel like it would cheapen it, and it would make it feel less powerful. But on top of that, even if Steve Trevor did somehow survive, we're talking about, flashing forward. It's like 70 years, I think, something like that.
Something like that. So Chris Pine would not look like Chris Pine, 70 years older.
Yeah, it would basically be like how we have the older Peggy Carter in Captain America: Civil War, after Steve Rogers met her during World War 2 times. So. Yeah. Now, there is the possibility that has been floated, and this was actually a rumor that with the original Wonder Woman, that Chris Pine was not only playing Steve Trevor, but a descendant of Steve Trevor who just so happens to look a lot like who would be his, great-great-grandfather or something like that. So
what a coincidence.
So I guess that there's a chance that he could be playing a descendant of Steve Trevor who just looks like, Steve Trevor, but just, Chris Pine again.
Well, we will have to wait and see. I don't think that this is a confirmation quite yet. Also in the news, Jon Favreau's The Lion King remake has cast John Oliver in the perfect role. You wrote this story for slashfilm.com.
So he's playing Zazu, who is the bird who serves as major domo to Mufasa, Simba's father. And he's basically the bird who follows Simba around and make sure he doesn't get into trouble. He was voiced by Rowan Atkinson in the original animated Lion King from '94, who you might know better as Mr. Bean. He does have a voice, and it's a good one. But John Oliver is the best replacement you could imagine, because he has this great British voice who is good for like really getting after Simba, and he can be annoying while also still being charming. So if you've listened or seen Last Week Tonight, you know exactly what his persona is and how this can be applied to Zazu as a character in the best way possible.
I can definitely see him being good in that role. And we should expect, with all this casting going around The Lion King, we probably should expect at D23 for them to reveal the entire cast lineup on stage, and that's happening this Saturday. Or no, I guess this Saturday, because that's the live action film, even though it's mostly animated, right?
Yeah, technically. We're just calling it live action because it'll look like live action.
And speaking of Disney's live action adaptations of their animated classics, Aladdin is now in development with Guy Ritchie, and he's been trying to cast the lead role of Aladdin. He wanted to find a unknown Middle Eastern or Indian actor to play Aladdin. and they've been struggling. They've actually pushed back production a bit. The test process was supposedly a mess. A casting agent told Hollywood Reporter.
And actually, it's not just Aladdin they're having trouble casting. It's both Aladdin and Jasmine.
Seems like that now they're considering Dutch, Canadian, and American actor for Aladdin.
We have Ashraf Koutet is the Dutch actor, and then there's a Canadian actor named Mina Massoud, and then an American actor named George Koustaros. They're all being considered for Aladdin. And then for Jasmine, Naomi Scott, who is a half Indian actress, she played Kimberly in the new Power Rangers movie, and an Indian actress named Tara Sutaria is being considered for the Jasmine role. But apparently neither of those, or none of those names are, I guess, strong leads yet. And so it seems like one of the biggest things that they're having trouble is finding people who have chemistry on screen, as opposed to just finding two individually talented people, which is an important part of Jasmine and Aladdin on the big screen. But you would think it wouldn't be so hard when you are pouring through a lot of unknown names already.
Yeah, and Richie, I guess, is intent on finding a newcomer or someone that you don't know already for these roles. Before he came on, Disney was eyeing Dev Patel and Riz Ahmed for Aladdin. And I think actually Riz Ahmed would have been a good choice, especially considering he has a musician background. He's done some rapping and some music.
Yeah, he's on the Hamilton mixtape.
But I guess one of the things is that they don't want focus to be drawn away from Will Smith, who is playing the genie. So they want the genie to be kind of the focal point of this film.
Yeah, because the movie is called Genie and not Aladdin.
Of course. Although I would suspect with Will Smith in that role, maybe they might actually show the genie's backstory, which I don't think we need. But
there was, back in 2015, there was like rumors of Disney developing some kind of prequel about like the genies that would have given us some insight into genie origins anyway. So I hope that they don't do that, because the movie isn't about that.
Yeah. Well, you can go to slashfilm.com and read HT's story, where she offers some actual good suggestions for actors and actresses that could play that role or those roles. Also in the news, Castle Rock, the Stephen King Multiverse series that J.J. Abrams is producing for Hulu, has cast another actor, and that actor is Bill Skarsgård, who is also playing Pennywise the Clown in the upcoming adaptation of the movie It, or of the book It. Strangely, in this show, his character is being described as a young man with an unusual legal problem, and it doesn't give his name, which is it's causing some people to speculate that he might be playing a small screen version of his big screen character, because that character, who goes by Pennywise the Clown, also goes under the name Robert Bob Gray. So maybe they aren't revealing the name of the character because they don't want to give that away. As you know, this show takes place in Castle Rock, which is the fictional town in most of the Stephen King books, and it's going to bring together a lot of the characters from those books together into one setting. What do you think about this? I mean, why cast that guy who is starring in It as a different character?
Yeah, I mean, it would be very cool if that were the case, but then I think it opens up a whole stream of questions as to, like, well, does that mean other Stephen King movies that have been made already might be part of this universe, or will Stephen King movies made from here on out have some ties to Castle Rock? I mean, I think it has the potential to create some confusion among people who aren't necessarily super hardcore Stephen King fans, but it would definitely be a cool tie-in to have the movie have some kind of narrative link to the series. But I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how it goes. I'm very curious to see how the series is even going to work, because it seems like throwing a lot of these characters and different stories together just makes for like a hodgepodge of weird, narrative tissue that I don't really see working cohesively as a narrative. But maybe that's just me.
Yeah, and weirdly, most of the casting so far has been for characters that aren't in the books. So it seems like the story at the core of the show is not going to be, it's going to be the supporting characters that are going to be from his stories, I think.
Yeah, maybe it'll just be characters who have like encounter characters involved in those stories in passing.
I think at his very worst, this could be the Once Upon a Time for Stephen King fans. And I hope it's not necessarily that, but I'm excited to see it. Hulu hasn't had a lot of shows that I've been super excited for. Sneaky Pete, is that a show?
Yeah.
that I think that's the one show that I've watched all the way through that was on Hulu. In the mailbag today, Kolin S asks, with War of the Planet of the Apes coming out next month and 2017 being a somewhat big year for sequels, John Wick 2, Vast 8, Despicable Me 3, Pirates, etc. I was curious to know, what is your favorite sequel, and or what sequel is better than the original?
Ooh, it's a big question. It's a big question.
It's a huge question. I think the easy answer for me is Empire Strikes Back, and I think that's the easy answer for most geeks out there, right? But I think there are a lot of them. I think nowadays you can't say that every sequel is going to suck. You look at the last few years, even of comic book films, we had The Dark Knight, we had Winter Soldier, we had Avengers 2. You know what? I would say of most recent, in Spider-Man 2, if we're on the superhero kick, but I would say of recent years, the best sequel in my mind, actually maybe Civil War, like a Civil War sequel. I guess it's a sequel. It's the second sequel, right?
Yeah.
I think he opens this question with Planet of the Apes. I'm going to end my answer with Planet of the Apes, and the answer is, I think, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War for the Planet of the Apes, the two films by Matt Reeves, are so much better than Rise. And I like Rise, but these films, and I've already said this trilogy, I think, for me, is the best trilogy since Indiana Jones. So I would have to say the Planet of the Apes sequels are my favorite sequels.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that the Ape sequels are definitely much better than Rise. But, I think that there's, like, some of my favorites is, I think, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban is my favorite of the entire series, and it's infinitely better than Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
It definitely has the best filmmaking.
For sure. And I think I don't know. Here's the thing. I like Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, but I don't love it anywhere near as much as I enjoy the sequels in the franchise. It's a little bit too childish and silly for me at times, which is just, Chris Columbus's trademark in a way. And I know you have to start the series somewhere and it allows the kids to grow up, but there's just some parts of that movie that kind of just make me feel, I don't know, weird. I also think Mission Impossible 3 is an amazing sequel. That's the one that J.J. Abrams directed, and Philip Seymour Hoffman.
And 4, I think, too, as well.
Yeah, no, Ghost Protocol is fantastic too. I love Philip Seymour Hoffman as the villain in Mission Impossible 3 so much.
Is that one of the best openings in film history, I think?
Oh, it's definitely one of my favorites. I love that opening scene so much, just because Hoffman is so great in that scene.
Yeah. And Tom Cruise. He goes from a range of emotions, like 6 different... He plays his character 6 different ways within 2 minutes, I think.
Yeah, it's amazing. Bourne Ultimatum is my favorite in the Bourne franchise, and I think it's the best one as well. But then on the less blockbuster side of things, because there are some sequels that aren't just blockbusters, I adore Before Midnight, which is the third movie after Before Sunrise and Before Sunset, Richard Linklater's romance trilogy. I loved Before Midnight so much that I saw it twice when I was at Sundance.
Huh. See, I like that movie a lot, but it's a little, I think I like the more hopeful parts of that franchise more than.
It is hopeful though. Like that's what's great about it is it's still hopeful, but it's real. Like it goes through the trials and tribulations of what it's like to be married, but then to still have that love for someone and to see the good in the relationship after all those years.
What are your favorite sequels of all time? Please tell us at peter@slashfilm.com. You can send your questions for the mailbag segment to peter@slashfilm.com. Please leave your name and general geographic location so we can reference you on the air if we use your question. And Brad, where can we find more of your work online?
I'm always at the old slashfilm.com, our old stomping grounds. You can also find me on Twitter at Ethan_Anderton. And I've got my own podcast called Go Flix Yourself.
And today in the spoiler room, Ben Pearson joins us to talk about what the War of the Planet of the Apes sequel could be about.
Hey, what's up, Peter?
Not much. So you wrote this article on slashfilm.com. Matt Reeves made some comments about what a sequel could be about. And before we get into that, I should say that this is a slight spoiler warning. We've both seen the movie War for the Planet of the Apes, but we're not going to spoil the movie. We know that most of you have not seen the movie, but what we are going to discuss probably features a character you have seen in the marketing of the movie. So if you have not seen the trailers, you might want to check out right now. We're not really going to spoil much that is not in the marketing, but if you want to go in completely clean, tune out now. You had your chance. Okay, so here we go. So what did Matt Reeves say about the future of the Planet of the Apes franchise?
So in an interview with Fandango, Reeves was talking about how when he and the co-writer Mark Bomback came up with the idea for Bad Ape, the character of Bad Ape in War for the Planet of the Apes, that's the character that's played by Steve Zahn. Reeves says that is to imply the idea that there would be apes out in the world that Caesar and his group of apes knew nothing of, and that they wouldn't have had the benefit of Caesar's leadership and the values that he had instilled in that community. Further conflicts in this kind of epic journey may take us toward the 1968 movie without necessarily ever getting there, and could be about conflicts between apes, not just conflicts between humans and apes. So, and then he actually finishes the quote by saying, "To me, there are many more exciting stories to be told, and I would love to tell those stories, not just one story, but multiple stories." So it seems like he's actually interested in telling, in sticking around, with this franchise for the foreseeable future. Obviously, he has the Batman coming up soon, but it sounds like he could, or definitely has the story ideas to be able to come back and direct a couple different movies in this franchise if he wanted to keep it going.
Yeah, well, when I was on set, they made it clear that they have backstories for all these apes, like Maurice, and they have a lot of stuff that they have already planned that they could explore in future movies. It's interesting that this Bad Ape character could be a focal point of this franchise going forward. What do you think this means for the future of the franchise?
Yeah, I mean, I think he sort of lays it out there. The idea is intriguing, right? That Bad Ape is representative of a type of character that could pop up in future movies, right? We know that Reeves has said that War for the Planet of the Apes is the conclusion of Caesar's trilogy. So he's not really the focal point of these movies anymore, but there could be a way that and Bad Ape is representative of that, to have Caesar's group meet up with other apes who have all over the world. Really, they could take this thing global if they wanted to. And that could be a direction that they could choose to go. They could make things, they could have the Exodus extend even further across the country, all sorts of different ways that they could go. But I love the idea of not having to recycle through human characters and their sort of limited motivations, because at this point in the story, they can only do so much, right? Like, the humans have been beaten down so much over the course of these three movies and sort of, wiped out by the apocalypse and all this kind of stuff, that the human stories, the potential for that is not really... there's not really a lot of room for them to have different stories at this point. But the ape stories, the apes out there who had nothing to do with Caesar's group, there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I feel like in a sequel, I would like them to focus mainly on the ape storyline, or maybe not even have humans at all in the next Planet of the Apes. Have it be about I know that they've already done this a little bit in Dawn, but have this be factions of apes, and the infighting that is going on. And obviously introducing other tribes could introduce us to that concept. So yeah, that is interesting. I can't wait to see where they go. I'm not sure if I would be as excited for the franchise if Matt Reeves isn't behind the camera.
Right.
Who could take on this franchise that would bring this level of intelligence and This is one of those rare blockbusters that's at the intersection of, an indie film and a blockbuster. It says something smart about us and this world, and it's just so clever and smart, but it's also fun and exciting.
There's the possibility that maybe Andy Serkis could do it. We haven't seen his directorial work really outside of second unit stuff, as far as I know. But he's got the Jungle Book movie coming up at some point if Warner Brothers ever decides to release that. And then, he obviously has a very powerful relationship with the character of Caesar, and he knows motion capture better than arguably anyone else in the industry. So maybe he could, step behind the camera, and if for some reason Matt Reeves decides to fall off and gets, bogged down in other projects, maybe Serkis himself could step in.
That is an interesting pick indeed. That's better than anything I can come up in my head. Well, you can read the full article on slashfilm.com. Ben, where can we find more of your work?
You can find me at Slashfilm, and you can find me on Twitter at Ben Pears.
And that does it for this edition of Slash Film Daily. Please, if you enjoyed this podcast, go to iTunes, review this podcast, rate it, spread the word, tell your friends. We're expanding this community at a drastic rate, and we appreciate all the feedback that you've given us. You can send your feedback to peter@slashfilm.com. That is also where you send mailbag questions. Please leave your name and general geographic location, so in case we mention your question on the air. We try to respond to as many emails as we possibly can, but we don't get to everything. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you tomorrow.